The power structure had successfully created the image of the American Negro as someone with no confidence, no militancy, and they had done this by giving him images of heroes that weren't truly militant or confident.
They've been programmed from birth with shitty food options, contaminated drinking water, gun violence, police brutality, and trauma after trauma after trauma. PTSD, no therapy.
Do you think there may be residual impacts of that trauma? Of course there is. It didn't end, friends, and it hasn't ended yet.
It comes as a great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you.
People cannot be blamed for their ignorance if they are genuinely ignorant. People can be blamed if they've had a different set of information and still choose to remain ignorant.
Has God said to you that you shouldn't eat of every tree of the garden? Said the serpent, his gaze locked with Eve, unbroken and intense. God said we can eat the fruit from any other tree, but we can't eat of this tree or we'll die. Replied Eve. You won't die, the serpent assures her. Quite the opposite. God knows that if you eat it, you will become awakened. He knows that if you eat it, that you will no longer be naive. And he knows that if you eat it, it will make you gods like him. Come, child, eat and rise above your station. Okay, so maybe it wasn't as dramatic as that, but this is the foundational origin of what my friend and I refer to as the forbidden fruit theory. It's the access to the many but coveting that which you cannot have even if it comes with warnings that it's not good for you. You know those red flags you tend to ignore, granting the benefit of the doubt to a guy that clearly doesn't deserve it? But that element of danger is exciting though, isn't it? There's such a rush of not knowing what's going to happen next from day to day that it's never boring. But you ever sit back and think to yourself, why? Like, why am I attracted to these no good men? When you know they're no good? Well, there's a very real reason why, and it's alarming how many women fall for this. Men fall for it too, but this one's about the ladies as we fall for it far more often. It's a bitter truth to face, but we can't change it if we don't face it. So what is it? What is it about the bad boy types that entices women so much? Well, it's a recipe of 3 problematic psychological traits that when put together, creates the perfect storm: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy known as the Dark Triad. I came across this term by accident while scrolling through YouTube, and psychologist Jordan Peterson was having a discussion on a podcast, and this concept came up. As the name suggests, the traits that make up the Dark Triad are the inverse of the typical traits that characterizes a person as generally good from a societal standpoint. The concept behind the Dark Triad is accredited to Delroy Paulhus and Kevin Williams. These are traits that are not pathological but definitely offensive. Post-relationship, we've seen countless women turn to TikTok to complain about the man they dealt with, and what's the #1 reason they say that it didn't work? It's one of the first traits in the triad: he was a narcissist. As a side note, a lot of times I hear women say that, but don't really know the definition of the word and are just parroting something they heard once. So to clarify, the definition of narcissism is extremely self-centered with an exaggerated sense of self-importance. Furthermore, in terms of the triad, it is grandiose, pride, ego, and a lack of empathy. Machiavellianism is categorized as manipulative, amoral, emotionally cold, and focused only on their self-interest. Psychopathy refers to antisocial behavior, impulsiveness, callousness, and our parasitical predator. The combination of these traits are at the core of toxic relationships. Recently, another tenet was added to the triad, and that tenet is sadism. Sadism is when a person gets sexual pleasure from causing other people pain and suffering or humiliation. This changes the name to the Dark Tetrad because of this. Not to argue with the experts, but I personally think that sadism is at the core of these traits, simply because you have to truly be a sadistic person to knowing or unknowingly exercise these traits on other people. It is important, absolutely vital, really, to first identify the problem and acknowledge that there is one in order to handle it. And the problem, as far as I can tell it, is that toxicity equals danger, and danger is kinda sexy, ain't it? What is it about the thrill of danger that draws people in? Danger or rumors of danger are typically supposed to serve as a warning. A rattlesnake's rattle is a warning not to get closer, or you will get bit. Biblically speaking, a warning often comes before destruction. Yet, for others, those same dangers offer the essence of a challenge, the invitation of an adventure. How many times have you heard one of your girlfriends describe a guy as too nice or boring because he has a predictable routine or lack an edge? I kind of get it. Stability doesn't equate to the call of adventure that so many women today long for. It's hard to see the forest for the trees, and if you're used to having toxicity in your life, it's your baseline for what's normal. So if you're treated differently than your toxic normal, it comes across as strained. So differentiating between toxic and healthy relationships is all but impossible. I've had to examine my own relationships and realize that very tree in my life. So here's how the dark triad manifests itself in different areas of your life. Parental. We all eventually arrive at the moment where we see our parents as fallible human beings. However, there's fallible and then there's abusive. Dark triad parents present as a combination of harsh authoritarian, overly permissive, or neglectful. Friendships. Dark triad friends are calculated friendships that are cultivated by what you can do for them. It could literally be anything, emotional or financial support, so long as it's you giving to them and them not returning the gesture in any way. The friendship only benefits one of you, and it ain't ever you. Romantic. The most common examples in the dark triad have got to be the homosexuals and the baby mamas of our culture. Homosexuals are the men who use sex to manipulate women for a place to live, cars to use, money, etc. You know the type. Baby mamas are the women who manipulate men through their kids for money and maybe a relationship. These traits aren't exclusive to just real life. In fact, these traits are often exalted and unfortunately become the baseline archetypes of many popular forms of media. In music, you needn't go far in the rap, not to be confused with hip-hop, to find a dark triad artist. 21 Savage, Future, Lil Wayne, Nicki Minaj, Sexy Red, and Cardi B, just to name a few. If you pay attention to the subject matter of their lyrics, they lay the groundwork to glamorize these negative traits to the masses despite in many cases not being that way in their private lives. In movies, there are too many to point out. The main character in A Clockwork Orange, Alex, is a definite standout. Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, Eric Killmonger for Black Panther, and Frank Costello from The Departed. Dark triad characters in film tend to be the villains of the story that should be a clear sign of the sadistic nature of these traits. Hardly anyone reads anymore, but a few examples from the books are Sherlock Holmes, Fernand Mondego, and Gideon Grey. These are popular characters that people love to one degree or another, and it's all attributed to the appeal of something more primal in our collective psyche. Art imitates life, imitates art, and the more we invest in wanting to see this trait in people, the more people will want to emulate it for its reward. One thing we cannot keep doing is that we can't keep touting that Black women are the most intelligent creatures on the planet while falling for basic tricks that leave us destitute. I came across this acronym from that Harley Quinn show, another dark triad character, and I think there's a lesson in it that'll help you the next time you come across one of those dark triad dudes. We love to say I'm a bad bitch, or I'm the baddest bitch, or something else along those lines. Since this is the positive spin in our cultural lexicon, much like we did with the N-word, then I think it'd be beneficial to us as a culture. The next time you get turned on by a thug type or accept ill treatment from a friend, parent, coworker, boss, whatever, just be a bitch. Breathe, identify the problem, tea break, consider your options, and handle it. And while I honestly hate being referred to as anyone's bitch, in this case, I say embrace it. It might just save you some regret, hardship, and heartbreak later.